Kia ora everybody, and welcome back to Civilization 5. Well, kind of. Actually, it's a little bit different today. This has been a long requested video. It's my Civ 5 tier list rankings. I've made a lot of tutorials, we play a lot of games live together, but we don't often actually rank all of the civs. So I'm going to go through and rank the vanilla civs in this video, and then in a separate video I'll do the DLC civs from Brave New World and God and Kings, but using the same criteria for both. My criteria here is basically how good is the civ at winning the game and how much better is it in comparison to an average baseline. Okay, so an average baseline might be a normal horseman, and then how well does this unique horseman compare better or worse to the average? Alright, so without any further ado, let's jump straight into the tier maker and get started with these civilizations, again the vanilla civs, ranked on how good I think they are at winning the game and destroying their opponents, of course. First up, we have Arabia, and I think it's no secret that Arabia is a fantastic civ in this game. I'm going to grab them and easily put them in one of these two top tiers. You can see I've got God tier, then I have A, B, and C, and then finally garbage tier. God tier civs I consider to be the best in the game. Then we have A, B, and C. A being like really good civs, maybe with a little bit of weaknesses. B, fairly average. C, consistently not very good, or at least not very favorable in comparison to the average. And finally garbage tier. These civs are just not good. Arabia, I'm going to pop, and hilariously, we're starting with a God tier, but I'm going to pop Arabia into the God tier. Reason being, if you haven't seen my guide for them, they are insane. Okay, so their camel archers are outstanding, like a 10 out of 10 unique unit. Their attacks are 30% stronger. They have no terrain penalties. They do have one small downside, but really, I find that when I'm playing as Arabia, I capture cities far more quickly with camel archers than I ever would, really, even in comparison to other civs who fill this niche well, right? Like the Kashyyyks, for example. The Bazaar is insanely powerful. You get it so early in the game. It's a market replacement. Their extended caravan range in the base is brilliant. Their religious bonus isn't quite as good as I think most people think, but maybe I'm just not a very good religious player. And finally, they get double oil, which is nice for trading with city-states and making money. But overall, really powerful economic civ. Hugely strong economic civ. Arabia, easily, I think, God tier civ. And I'm not even over-exaggerating. It's a shame that we started with a God tier civ, but that's all good. We'll move on. Next up on the screen, we have the Aztecs. Aztecs are one that I've sort of hummed and hawed about a little bit. I lean towards either A tier or B tier. Fairly middle of the road. I realize that they're just sort of stretching this boundary, I think. The Jaguars, the unique unit, they heal when they kill, which is so strong. And they keep that ability all the way through until infantry as well. So, like, that is really, really powerful, particularly if you can promote them. They're very strong. But, of course, you know, not quite as mobile as some of the horse units. The Aztec Floating Garden can help your cities grow big, and big cities equals more yields, right? And then they also get culture from kills. It's good. It's not great. Actually, I'm pretty happy with where I put them, actually. We're gonna keep them solidly in the B tier, now that I'm reflecting on it. I do think that's the place for them to be. Next up, we have China. China, very strong. Okay, so China have the paper makers, which is a library for free, and it gives you extra gold. It's pretty good. Their Chuko News, I think, are their unique unit, but they're fantastic, right? They replace crossbows. They shoot twice. They fire twice. They shoot twice, and they earn promotions twice as quickly. They're really powerful for an aggressive domination game, and they also earn their GGs 1.5 times faster. That's their great generals. which is good. You know, it's not great. You can use it to citadel, bomb, and steal some territory. But their unique unit, their unique crossbows for me, are what put them solidly as an A tier. But I think overall, they don't have a great ability to sort of cheese the game with lots of extra yields, except for taking capitals, right? So not quite an A tier, but a god tier. But they're very good. China, definitely very good. Next up on this list is Babylon, and I won't dwell too long on Babylon, because as most people know, Babylon is insane, absolutely god tier. Their bowmen are nearly 1.5 times tougher than the unit they replace, a third better at actually firing. They're a great defensive unit. They're a great aggressive unit, but particularly on the defense, which synergizes really well with their unique walls, which doubles the strength of your cities to keep you safe in the early game. Of course, the free great scientist is really what makes them, right? The great scientist spawn bonus that you get when you research writing. You get a academy down immediately. Your science yield goes insane, through the roof. Just incredible science is Babylon, and need I say any more? A defensive civ, one of the best 2 science civs in the game. It's really a no-brainer, I think. Babylon, 100% a god tier civ, and I would say actually, when you consider all of the civs in the game, Babylon are still god tier, and still probably in the top 3. Many players would put them first. I tend not quite to, but I can definitely see that line of thinking. Makes a lot of sense. Next up, we have Denmark. Denmark, I'm going to put smack bang in the middle of the road. I'm tempted to put them slightly lower, but I think I will leave them at B tier. Their berserkers come online earlier than the longswordsmen that they replace, and honestly, they're actually a pretty good unit. I do like the berserkers. I like their extra movement. I like their extra strength. The ski infantry, we won't talk about the ski infantry, but the berserkers really good. No pillage cost, nice, and easy embark and disembark, nice. Again, nothing great. I think they're really a middle of the road civ. A really middle of the road civ. And I'm actually going to throw the Incans into the middle of the road here as well. The Incans, to be honest, the one that I haven't really spent a great deal with, right? They have their unique slinger, which replaces the archer. It's good, it's faster, right? But weaker, of course. The terrace farm is their unique improvement. It does provide additional food, which is great. And you know, sort of tiers with like civil service and the such. You know, it is what it is. And then finally, really, to round them off, you have their unique ability, which is the Great Andean Road. I won't dwell on this too long. I think, again, fairly middle of the road for Inca. Very much middle of the road. Next up, we have Korea, which is the total opposite. Korea are a god tier civ in Civ 5. You may have seen some coverage from me before. I think they're probably roughly the second best city in the game. Their tech boosts, right? Every time you build a science building, you get free tech. I mean, amazing. Right? It's incredible. Probably one of the best boosts, one of the best innate advantages in the game, maybe the best. Their specialist bonuses are massive as well, just stacking on top of that. However, their Huacha turtle ships let them down. I think their unique units are nothing to write home about, but their insane science is still enough to lift them up into the god tier, which just goes to show, I think, how powerful they are as a civ when their unique units don't really even do anything for them, but they're still able to nab god tier status. Next up, we have Mongolia. Mongolia I'm going to put as an A tier civ with China, because I think in many ways they're kind of similar, right? So Mongolia have the Kashyyyks, which are just like totally different to the knights that they replace, and they're absolutely incredible. They can move 3 tiles, they can fire, they can flee, they gain their promotions quickly, they produce great generals more quickly. the damage they deal to cities is not reduced. They are an incredible unique unit, just like how China's is incredible. The Khan's advantage helps your Kashyyyks heal more quickly, so there's a good synergy there, moving it around the same rate, rather than being left behind. So that's really what boosts the Kashyyyks up, I think, and that faster mounted unit, right? It's already faster mounted units thanks to Mongolia. It's all just synergizing together. The city-state attack bonus is fine, good for a single-player game, but nothing massively to write home about. But all in all, just the insane power of Mongolia to kill their opponents early is what puts them in A tier, I think. But of course, they don't scale massively well if you aren't able to take advantage of that in the earlier game by securing at least a capital, maybe a city-state. Hence why they don't quite make it into the god tier. But they are, I was going to say, but they're close. If they had stronger late game abilities, they would be, but they're just not quite there. Spain, we really need to put something down here, don't we? Don't worry, we'll get there. Spain, I'm going to put at B tier, but it's really tempting to put them at C tier. So Spain's unique advantage makes it difficult to assess, I think, right? They're not so map dependent on some maps, but then others they are, right? So that they're relying on natural wonders. Their terciaries are tougher and better than mounted units, and the musketmen, but they're not hugely powerful. The conquistadors, we're not really founding cities late in the game. It's not really a good idea, but their extra sight, no city attack penalty, and embarked defense is pretty good. They are definitely a lot better than knights, and really a lot better than a lot of the unique knights. Overall, I will leave Spain in B tier, but just note it's very close for me. I don't rate Spain very highly. Just because they're so flippant. They're such a flippant civ to play. But I will leave them in the middle because that flippancy and that volatility also comes with some real bonuses, right? Sometimes it can be great, so I'll sort of average them out. Next up we have England. England, for me, is really, really powerful. Like, almost god tier powerful. For me, it's crossing this border, but it doesn't quite get there. The extra spy shouldn't be underestimated, and I think people sleep on that a lot, right? If you're trying to play catch-up on higher difficulties in particular, you can still text twice as fast, right? That's amazing. That's amazing. And of course, if you're trying to go the diplomatic victory route, well, then you've got one extra diplomat to help you stage coups in city-states or spy on enemy players, right? Their longbowman is just fantastic. The range is just insane. The AI never gets promotions all the way to range. And if you're playing as England, then you end up being like way better than the AI playing as England, basically. If you can get to machinery in good time as well, you can go for like a sub 60, maybe sub 50 turn conquering with the English longbowmen. Really, really powerful. Ship of the line, it's a frigate that's stronger by about, I think, 20%, and deals about 25% more damage. Also, it has extra sight. It's insane. The only reason, you might be thinking, so why aren't they here? Well, the frigate is a naval unit, and naval units on an average map aren't as useful as land units. They're definitely better in Civ 5 than Civ 6, don't get me wrong, but they're just not quite there. And of course, it combos with England's extra movement. Overall, really close to god tier. I have a real soft spot for England and their extra spies and their frigates and their longbowmen, but I'm going to leave them at A tier for now. Who do we have next? Oh, it's Polynesia. Unfortunately, Polynesia, fairly middle of the road civ for me. I've never had a huge amount of luck playing as Polynesia, I have to say. They have the Maori warrior, which it has a 10% penalty to enemy units, which is a slight advantage. The Maui tile improvement is really fun, but quite situational. If you have space to spam them out, it's really good, but if you don't, not so much. The fact that they can embark earlier is great. Yep, definitely you can get some really good positioning on the map, which is powerful. Extra sight while embarked, actually, to be honest, not hugely useful, but nice to have. And the combat bonus near the Maui tile improvement, pretty average. I'm going to put them B tier. Maybe that's my personal bias. Perhaps they should be C tier, but I'm going to leave them as B tier because the Maori warrior is from New Zealand, and so am I. Sorry about the biases. Next up, we have Egypt. Egypt is a really fun civ to play. So they have a wonder bonus, right? And which is great on the lower difficulties, but the trouble is not so good on the higher difficulties, because as everyone knows, you have to get used to not getting as many wonders when you're playing on higher difficulties. And for that reason, I don't actually rate that massively highly, but I do acknowledge it's good for on sort of average and lower difficulties. Their war chariots are really strong, no horses needed, +1 movement, great. Their burial tombs give you +2 happiness and free upkeep, which is nice. Is it game changing? No. In this case, it's better at the deity level, but worse at the lower levels. If you're playing on a lower difficulty level, the +2 happiness is going to make almost no difference to you, probably, unless you're really struggling, of course. But, you know, overall, I think very, very average and very dependent on which difficulty you're playing. Generally better on lower difficulties and worse on higher difficulties. And for that reason, I'll plop Egypt smack bang in the middle of the road. Finally, looking at the next civ, we're actually going to rate someone a little bit lower than God tier A or average tier, that's B tier, because I see that France is next. Hello, France, and sorry for any French listeners. But I'm going to plop France, whabam, down there. I think their double theming bonus in the capital, I mean, sure, it's a small bonus, but again, on higher difficulties, you're not going to be able to take advantage of this as well. Even on lower difficulties, it's not great. The total amount of tourism gained from the advantage is probably going to be quite small. Their musketeers aren't bad, but also aren't great. They don't really have a lot of... Other than the fact that they're stronger than the musketmen by just a fraction, that's about it. And then the chateau tile improvement, to be honest, is actually pretty garbage. Like often it's just a waste of what would otherwise be a good food production tile, potentially. I've built a lot of them in the past, and I always end up thinking, man, I wish I'd just built farms, gone for growth, and had more citizens to have specialists, you know, at the end of the day. So for that reason, I am rating France a garbage tier, and the first garbage tier civ to rank in Civilization 5. Next up, we have Germany. Germany, I think, actually quite strong. Not as strong as Germany in Civ 6. Germany in Civ 6 would be an S tier for sure. Germany in Civ 5, however, I think it probably deserves to just be one below that. So I'm going to pop Germany into my A tier civs with some fairly similar fellow patriots here. The Hansa, I think is really quite nice. The Panzer, however, the Panzer tank, not so hot. Less unit maintenance goes really nicely with their barbarian army ability, and I think that people sleep on this quite a bit. The idea behind it is that you go out early with your warrior and your archers, and you come back with like a few less, but you know, you go out, you fight, you have a 1/3 chance that you'll get nothing, but you can also flip them onto your side, right? So you can end up snowballing a massive army in the early game. Complete city-state quests as well at the same time, so you can pick up city-state alliances, another thing that isn't specifically mentioned about Germany, but something that makes them really good. And that, of course, combines with the less unit maintenance. Overall, I think a really powerful civ, particularly in the earlier game. You don't want to be spawning next to Germany. These guys are strong. And the Panzer tank, while it's a fairly average unit, it is, slightly stronger and moves slightly faster. And the Hansa scales well through into the late game as well. So they have the sticking power, unlike some of the civs that I've ranked below them, which just can't quite get there somehow. Greece is a really interesting one. I lean towards B tier, but then sometimes I think actually maybe they're an A tier. Maybe they're worthy of an A tier. Let me tell you why. I think that their city-state influence is so powerful because once you get a city-state, you don't lose it. And if you've seen my diplomacy and city-state guides video, you'll know that those city-state bonuses are insane, particularly on higher difficulties. They're really powerful because their relative effect is much more. The hoplites, their unique unit, it's a little bit stronger. That's about it. The companion cavalry, yeah, it is what it is. I mean, it's, it's not a lot. I just think that overall, though, the city-state influence ability of Greece is what nearly rockets them for me into A tier, but I'm going to leave them at B. It's just, but I am just going to leave them there. But just note, very close. This is actually probably the closest decision of the video as I look through into who we've got left. I think that's a really, really close call. India, sorry, garbage tier. I know they're a meme. I know Gandhi's a meme, but really, I just don't think that India is a very good civ in Civ 5. I just don't. I think that their population growth is nice, don't get me wrong, but it really messes with the whole structure of the civ. I think when you bring happiness and when you bring unhappiness and population growth and city size, it makes it not only difficult to play, but actually more of a disability than an ability in a lot of cases. And it can make you quite inflexible as well. Very inflexible. Neat, definitely, if you can manage to just not go to war and play peacefully, but that's really hard as well. It's really, really hard. And that's worth noting. Their war elephant, to be honest, I mean, sure, you can move through rough terrain, it's a little bit stronger, cool, but, I mean, for offense, it's just not that useful. These war elephants will just get slaughtered by horses. Really just not useful. And the Mughal fort is pretty garbage, and I won't really dwell on that. Sorry, India fans. You almost made it to C tier, but not quite. Next up, we have the Iroquois, and again, I'm going to just drop a hot garbage bomb down here. Honestly, I mean, the Mohawks, they move faster, but, I mean, through forest, but quite situational. They don't need iron, which is cool, but, when you're facing up against swords, if the AI's got long swords or more, these guys aren't going to stand up. The Longhouse, which replaces the workshop, is one of the few buildings that are not really... They're just not really useful to build, to be honest, I think. They're just not high up in the priorities because they're pretty average. Forest Road sucks and Forest Caravan sucks. Sorry, Iroquois. You're a garbage tier civ, and I don't see any bonuses from you. Next up, we have Japan. Japan, again, unlike in Civ 6, where they're an absolute powerhouse, in Civilization 5 they are not. I thought a little bit about Japan because I think that Bushido is... it is a pretty good ability and sort of easy to play, where your damaged units don't take combat penalty, and for that reason I'm like, okay, cool, a great civ to play sort of average level. But the Zero is their unique airplane war unit is just awful. It's just too late in the game. By that point, people are using bombers. They've got siege, artillery, and it's just not useful. It's just really not useful. And the samurai do start with a promotion, which is nice. They'll earn you your great generals quicker. You unlock them at an okay point in the game. The ability to build fishing boats with them is cool, but to be honest. If you haven't got your fishing boats up by then, you've probably screwed up anyway. And for that reason, even though they appear like a B tier on paper, I think they're closer to a C tier. So I'm going to pop them right down there. Sorry, Japan. Next up, we have the Ottomans. And again, this is one that I have to preface by saying I haven't spent a lot of time with them. Have not spent a lot of time playing as the Ottomans. So I'm less qualified to rank them, but when I read through what they've got and when I reflect on the one game that I made, the few games that I played quite a while ago, I tend to think they're pretty similar to Japan for almost exactly the same reasons. They tend to be quite good. They tend to be fairly average, and their bonuses tend to be fairly average. Like the Janissaries, nothing particularly complicated about it. It's good, right? It just is. The reduced naval maintenance is nice. The prize ships ability, to be honest, not that great, right? The main, it's just not that great. Overall, I think a C tier Civ. But I will again just remind you that I haven't played a great deal with them. So if you have any feedback on them, or you think I've really mislabeled them, do let me know, because they're a Civ that I'm quite interested in playing, actually. Like, quite interested in playing more with them. However, looking through them, I have to say, not particularly good. Next up, we have Persia, who I'm going to put as an A tier Civ. I think Persia is really good. Their longer golden ages, even without additional bonuses that you can stack on top, really powerful. Really, really powerful. So if you keep your happiness up, and you use your great artists cleverly, you're gonna really go well with them. But think about things like the Taj Mahal, all those abilities to really stack your happiness and earn the golden ages fast. And when you have a golden age, the whole empire flourishes. And that, I think, is really Persia's best thing. Their unique unit, yeah, sure, like the unique unit, their abilities, they're all fairly average. The extra movement is nice. Their extra movement is quite nice. But the Immortals aren't actually that strong. And then Satrap's Court, +1 gold and +2 happiness per city. That is really nice and quite flexible as well. Obviously goes better with a wide empire, but you can also play Tool. It's not massive though. And because it's not insane, like it's not some insane science bonus, I'm going to leave them at A tier. A really strong Civ though. Most definitely a really strong Civ. And I think one that people don't actually pay a huge amount of attention to for some reason. I actually saw someone playing the other day and they're like, what's this Civ? I was like, what do you mean, what's this Civ? It's Persia. Next up we have Rome. I'm going to put Rome... Rome, I feel like, could go here, or here, right? A, B, or C. I'm going to put them at... I'm humming and hawing. But I'm going to put them at the B tier, I think. Reason being, I find the Capital's first bonus is really nice, right? So it's really nice, but it's also like not super powerful because it's not particularly flexible. You have to have something built in the capital in order to get the bonus elsewhere. The ballistas. The ballistas are really great units. I find when I'm playing on higher difficulty, though, I don't really get to make use of them. But they are better catapults, and for that reason, they're quite good. But mainly, you're probably only going to be making use of them on the sort of middle and lower difficulties, and that's why I'm reluctant to put Rome at A tier, because I think its inflexibility limits it a little bit. The legions, yep, great, but they do sort of... they suffered the same fate as the ballista, where at higher difficulties, you may not really get to make use of them because they're unlocked too early and not quite good enough to take cities by themselves. For that reason, I'm leaving Rome at B tier, but I do acknowledge on lower difficulties, it probably deserves a slightly higher rating. But I'm trying to rate... I'm trying to sort of average it out for the average player who tends to play around 4 or 5. But sometimes 3. So, we're sort of right smack bang in the middle. But also I know a lot of you guys are higher skilled players. So I'm just trying to keep that average Trying to keep that average consistent throughout the video. Next up, fourth last, I have Russia. Russia was the first civ that I ever played with in Civilization 5, and for that reason, they hold a very special place in my heart. But I'm probably going to be putting them at the B tier. So Russia receive some double resources, right? Which is great, because you can sell it off, but not particularly useful for actually necessarily you making use of it for your army. Their extra production is great, definitely. I love their extra production. Again, it's not massive, but it's pretty good. The Cossack is iconic, but not an overly powerful cavalry unit, to be honest. And the Crepist, the tile acquisition sort of subtext part of this that allows you to acquire those tiles faster is really good. So once you've got the Crepist up and running, your borders will spread really nicely. This is a good ability. And for that reason, I think across the board, they're good, which means they deserve B tier. Yeah. And likewise, Siam is actually going to follow them straight in. Siam relies quite heavily on city-states. You'll get extra yields from city-states. It's really nice, but of course you do need to have city-state alliances. However, the reason why Siam is tier 3 and not slightly higher up is because you don't have a huge ability to keep those alliances. So you often spend a lot of your game working on trying to keep them because they're so useful for you. Their Watts are a university that provides a little bit of culture, which is nice for a player like me who tends to ignore culture, but not massively powerful, to be fair. And their elephants aren't massively powerful either. For that reason, I'm putting them at B tier. But they are quite a fascinating civ, actually. They sort of feel like a DLC civ, but they're not. Just because they're so different. Second last, I have Songhai. Songhai, I'm going to put probably... I sort of hum and har about Songhai, but I'm going to put them in the A tier alongside the likes of China and Mongolia. And of course, England. Reason being... It's a really difficult one for me, actually. Sometimes I think they should be A tier. Sometimes I think they should be B tier. Often in my mind, I don't know about you guys, but in my mind, I get them confused with Civ 6's Songhai, and I'm like, oh, they're amazing. Their cavalry is a really nice unit. It replaces the knights, so you can actually make use of it. Their unique building is the mud pyramid mosque. Which is actually it is actually producing some pretty good tile yields. Like you can get quite a bit of happiness and culture and food from it, providing you can synergize well with a religion, right? Because it replaces the shrine. And because it relies on that religion, I'm less likely to rank it highly. I think I would be more likely to rank Songhai higher up if they didn't have that reliance. And then in the vanilla game, I think they received triple gold from pillaging Barb encampments. But then in the God and Kings and Brave New World, they got that, and also I think land units gain the amphibious promotion. Which strengthens them while they're embarked. And I think actually that this is sort of the saving grace, not the embarkment part, but the receiving triple gold from barb camps and pillaging cities. That's really strong. Obviously, you need to play an aggressive game. You want to try and make use of your cavalry if you can, but don't worry about it if you can't. And the triple gold from pillaging cities is massive. Reason why they're not higher up with these guys is because they're not consistently good. You do have to try and do some of that pillaging of at least barb camps. There's a fun strategy here where you start the game with honor and then move through commerce with Songhai, but not one that I've personally tried myself, but it's there. And then last but not least, it is, of course, in alphabetical order, the United States of America, better known as America. America. I'm tossing up between A tier and B tier when I think about America. Reason being, I think they're a fairly strong civilization. Like, whenever I play as America, I don't... which actually, to be fair, I haven't played a huge amount with them, but whenever I do play with them, I do think that they sort of start off as a B tier and then become an A tier. And the reason why that is because they're sort of catered towards the later game, but their unique ability is actually good at land grabbing. So all of your military units have +1 sight, which is great, and it combos well with their unique Minuteman, which replaces the Musketman, a strong unit. Their B-17 replaces the Bomber, so again, it's a unit that people do use, a strong unit, but you don't get it until a bit later in the game. The only thing you can really do as the Americans in the early game is take advantage of their 50% discount on purchasing tiles. And that shouldn't be slept on because you can nab tiles that have high yields in the early game and ensure that your early cities have greater yields. But, like I say, with the B-17 and the Minutemen, you don't get them until near the end of the game. And for that reason, even though I think in the later game they're an A tier, in the earlier game, I do think they're a B tier, and because the B-17 in particular is unlocked quite late, I'm going to leave them at B tier. And that concludes this long-form video of me, a tier list, Civ 5 vanilla civs, and hopefully you. I'll be really interested to look at the viewer retention on this video to see if anybody has made it until this point. If you have, let me know, and I'll chat with you in the comments. But, that concludes my Civ 5 tier list for the vanilla civs, and you can see why I had to break this up into 2 separate videos, because there's a lot to discuss, and I'm a very reflective and analytical person. So I like to take my time and really think about these things. If you did enjoy this video and you'd like to see the other part, please let me know, drop a like rating, maybe consider subscribing. We're a small growing community. When or if I make the other part of this video with the DLC civs, I'll be sure to link it in the doodly-doo and comments below. Other than that, thank you so much for joining me, whether you were listening, watching, or both. And until next time, I'll see you then. Bye-bye, everybody. Take care.